Namaste. One day it happened that somebody asked Ramakrishna Paramahamsa that from where will you find so many Buddhas, so many people who are willing to become Buddhas? And Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, you need not worry, I will tell you a story. And Ramakrishna Paramahamsa shared a beautiful story. He said, there was a herd of goat, and in that herd of goat, there was a baby tiger. And he was lost. He was a tiger, but he was roaming around like a goat. And one day, an old tiger observed, and he immediately realized that this baby tiger is in the wrong place. He is in a herd of goat. He is not a goat, he is a tiger. And so the old tiger pulled that baby tiger and took him to a nearby river. And while he was doing so, the baby tiger was crying, making a lot of noise. But the old tiger took him to the river bank and then showed him his face in the river. And when the baby tiger saw his face in the river, he realized that he is also looking like the same old tiger. For a minute, a thought came that he is no different. He is also a tiger. And then he became little comfortable. And then the old tiger takes him to the cave, and in the cave he gives him meat to eat. And the baby tiger is not willing to have that meat. It hesitates. The baby tiger hesitates. It's afraid because it never have had any meat. It always used to eat grass. But the old tiger, the master, encourages him to taste the meat. And the moment the baby tiger tastes the meat, a great roar arises in him. And in that roar, in that explosion, the goat is gone and Buddha is born. And Ramakrishna Paramahamsa says that an old tiger is required. So you need not worry, from where will I find my Buddhas? There are many. I just have to make them realize that they are the tiger and not a goat. This realization is an outcome of retrogression. When a planet is retrograde, it wants you to magnify the matters of your life in which you need to introspect. And through your introspection, you need to correct those matters of your life. And that is how you will progress in life, through introspection. Retrogression helps you to introspect because retrogression magnifies the matters of life in which the retrogression happens. It is necessary that you always associate yourself with the right kind of person. Company matters. A wrong company can even destroy a good man. Many times, a good man falls in love with a bad woman, and within no time, he is completely wasted. Why? Because company matters. When you associate with a wrong person, you also become wrong. That is why it is said that love is contagious. Whatever you love, you become like that. That is why when you love, love something of the higher nature. In this extensive podcast, I have talked about retrograde Jupiter and retrograde Jupiter in all 12 houses. I am sure that those who have been following me closely will learn many new things through this podcast. So let's begin. The very basics of Kundali are based on four angles that form the four pillars of human existence. Dharma Trikona, meaning angle of righteousness. Artha Trikona, meaning angle of economics. Kama Trikona, meaning angle of sexuality. And Moksha Trikona, meaning angle of liberation. Dharma Trikona contains the sign of Aries, Leo and Sagittarius. Artha Trikona contains the sign of Taurus, Virgo and Capricorn. Kama Trikona contains the sign of Gemini, Libra and Aquarius. Moksha Trikona contains the sign of Cancer, Scorpio and Pisces. It is necessary to remember that Jupiter, Sri Guru, is all about following the path of righteousness. And so Jupiter does extremely well in the Dharma Trikona Rashi, that is in Aries, Leo and Sagittarius. Jupiter is very happy to dwell. Similarly, liberation or the path of enlightenment is possible only by the grace of Sri Guru. And so Jupiter also does well in the signs of Moksha Trikona Rashis, that is in Cancer, Scorpio and Pisces. If you observe closely, then you will be amused to find that two signs ruled by Jupiter, Sagittarius and Pisces, fall in these two sets of Trikona Rashis. Sagittarius belongs to the Dharma Trikona, while Pisces belongs to the Moksha Trikona. And within these two sets comes the sign of Cancer, in which Jupiter exalts. So all in all, Jupiter simply loves the Dharma Trikona and Moksha Trikona Rashis, which brings the fact out that Jupiter does extremely well in the 6 zodiac signs of Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Cancer, Scorpio and Pisces. So now coming to the question of having retrograde Jupiter in these 6 signs, the outcome remains positive. So if you have a retrograde Jupiter in Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Cancer, Scorpio or Pisces, then you don't have to worry much. It is just that you are going to get positive results, though a little late in life. Similarly, if your retrograde Jupiter is in the 1st house, 5th house, 9th house, 4th house, 8th house or 12th house, then too you will get positive results though late in life. However, please note that retrograde Jupiter in 1st, 5th, 9th, 4th, 8th and 12th house must be in the sign of Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Cancer, Scorpio or Pisces. Only then will you enjoy the positive results of retrograde Jupiter in your chart. then the Mahadasha of such a retrograde Jupiter will prove highly beneficial in your life. So far, I have discussed positive signs and positive house placements for retrograde Jupiter. However, now I will briefly discuss the negative signs and negative house placements for retrograde Jupiter. Jupiter dislikes the other two sets of signs that belong to the Artha Trikona and Kama Trikona. Artha means money. Jupiter is not interested in money. In fact, Jupiter is just like the Divine Master Ramakrishna Paramhans. Ramakrishna Paramhans never kept a single penny with him. It was said that if by chance a coin was found in his pocket, then he would get mad and just throw away that coin. Jupiter is just like His Holiness Ramakrishna Paramhans. And Kama means sex. Jupiter has absolutely nothing to do with sex. He in fact doesn't understand that why a man has to seduce a woman. Because benevolent Jupiter belongs to the highest state of awareness. And so he considers a woman as a mother or a sister. Beyond this relation, he can't understand any other relation. So sexual or physical relation doesn't fall in the dictionary of Sri Guru, the Holy Lord Jupiter. And since sex has absolutely no place in the life of Sri Guru, signs of Kama Trikona simply don't relate with the higher octaves of Lord Jupiter. And so Jupiter is not happy when it falls in the sign of Kama, that is sex, and Artha, that is money. And so now I will reveal the signs that Jupiter dislikes. The signs that Jupiter dislikes are Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. Similarly, Jupiter is not comfortable in the 2nd, 6th, 10th, 3rd, 7th, and 11th house. Many people assume that Jupiter does extremely well in the 2nd house, but I have seen many men and women with Jupiter in the 2nd house and they literally struggle to maintain a good bank balance. So Jupiter in the house of wealth may not mean that you will succeed in having a good bank balance. However, the benevolent Jupiter may shower the wealth of wisdom on you, which in fact is the real wealth of life. Remember, Jupiter hates money and Jupiter hates sex. And so please don't expect lots of money and lots of sexual pleasures from Lord Jupiter. You visit a divine master not to ask for money and not to ask for sexual pleasures from women. You visit a divine master to find the answers to your problem and to find the true essence of human life. So now, when retrograde Jupiter is in the 2nd, 6th, 10th, 3rd, 7th, and 11th house, you should expect negative results. Because even a normal Jupiter in these houses gives negative results. And so retrogression would make matters worse than otherwise. I will now begin by sharing the general essence of retrograde Jupiter in all 12 houses. Retrograde Jupiter in 1st house. This is a very positive placement. The person evolves but slowly. It takes time for such a person to understand the reality of life. But once awakened, he never turns back. He continues to walk on the path of self-awareness. I would say that such a placement Though retrograde is a wonderful placement, provided this retrograde Jupiter falls in Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces sign. If retrograde Jupiter is not placed in these signs, then the person suffers from self-doubt, has low confidence, is timid, and is not progressive by nature. However, still, irrespective of the sign, first house placement for retrograde Jupiter remains positive. The thought of bringing awareness to oneself comes late in life, but as they say, it is better to be late than to be never. Retrograde Jupiter in second house. This is a negative placement. The person suffers especially if the sign is not suitable to Jupiter's nature. As explained earlier, if Jupiter falls in Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces sign, then there is some hope for a positive outcome. Else, the person is devoid of wisdom and generally wastes his or her life living an average life. Retrograde Jupiter in the second house is not favorable when it comes to seeking family support. The person lives alone, or even if he or she has a family, there is a serious problem of trust issues and the native cannot count on his or her family. This retrograde Jupiter may lead the native to multiple visits to the dentist, and if the sign lord of Jupiter is also retrograde, then there is a serious issue with teeth, eyes, or throat. In fact, if a man or woman having retrograde Jupiter in the second house gets his or her tonsils removed, then it is good, since this placement makes the person suffer due to cold and sore throat. Retrograde Jupiter in third house. This is a negative placement. Retrograde Jupiter in third house can create many issues with brothers or sisters. The native may also suffer from certain psychological issues. The native finds difficulties in accepting change. Such a native continues to oppose change. He forgets the fact that except for change, everything else changes in life. He is unable to realize that change is constant. Such a person may end up choosing the wrong brand of car or bike. Making wrong decisions is one particular trait of retrograde Jupiter in the third house. If retrograde Jupiter is in Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces sign, then the native has some hopes of getting positive results in regards to siblings or in regards to work. Then such a person can show some creativity in life. Otherwise, this is not a favorable placement for retrograde Jupiter. Retrograde Jupiter in fourth house. This is a positive placement for the native. The native gradually earns good status in life. Properties, good home, a positive mother, and a very strong positive foundation is what this retrograde Jupiter bestows on the native. The native also enjoys good luxurious cars and bikes. Happiness is guaranteed with this placement, however, with delays. Women with this placement, though, should be careful when it comes to breasts, since this is one specific placement that can lead to breast cancer. Chest pain, issues with the heart are some of the results of this placement, especially if Jupiter is placed in Libra, Aquarius, Gemini, Virgo, Capricorn, or Taurus. Mother is good by nature, but the native is so much influenced by his mother that he rarely listens to his wife. To him, mother is always right. Overall, not a bad position for retrograde Jupiter, though the native should definitely introspect on his attachments with mother in life. Retrograde Jupiter in 5th house. A positive placement for retrograde Jupiter. The 5th house is the most significant house. It is the house of creativity, house of romance, and house of intelligence. It is a house that loves to demonstrate and show off. Retrograde Jupiter in this house gradually brings success in education. In the early years of education, the native may not appear as a bright student, but in the higher years of education, slowly, the native starts improving and gets good marks in examinations. This is a good placement for love affairs, though at times certain ethics and principles stop the native from having fun. Retrograde Jupiter in the 5th house native generally is a positive placement, especially if Jupiter is in Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces sign. Such a native should definitely attempt competitive exams. He may not succeed in the very first attempt, but after a few attempts, he would be able to crack tough exams such as that of UPSC, MPSC, NEET, CAT, or IIT. Retrograde Jupiter in 6th house. This is a very negative placement. Person struggles at the workplace. Promotion comes very late, and in many cases, the person is denied promotion, or in worst cases, may also have to face demotion in his career. Diseases, conflicts, the native's energy is spent mostly in dealing with all kinds of disputes and diseases within the family. In some cases, the native himself may be diagnosed with chronic diseases such as diabetes, high blood pressure, or thyroid. Lower back pain and stress at the workplace is a peculiar trait of this placement. If Jupiter is in Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces sign, then the negative results are reduced to a large extent. Else, the native has no other option than to suffer in life. Retrograde Jupiter in 7th house. This is the worst position for Jupiter, and retrograde Jupiter makes it more worse. The native suffers in marriage. Widowhood is possible with this placement. Native is always confused when it comes to making major decisions in life. Many a time the native makes wrong decisions and then later regrets heavily. This is a perfect placement that traps the native between his wife and his mother. Conflicts in marriage arise because the native cannot take a firm stand. Neither can he take the side of his wife or he can take the side of his mother. And so in a way, he gets sandwiched between the two. In certain cases, natives with this placement have committed suicide because they cannot tolerate the constant quarrels between the wife and his mother. Overall, a very unfortunate placement. However, if Jupiter is in Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces sign, then the negative results are reduced to a large extent. Else, the native continues to suffer in life. Retrograde Jupiter in 8th house. This is not a bad placement. Retrograde Jupiter in the 8th house is a very positive placement. The native slowly and steadily starts taking much interest in spirituality, and if the overall quality of the chart is good, then such a native also progresses on his or her spiritual path. Strange spiritual experiences and encounters with spiritual sadhus and saints are observed with this placement. Hypnotism, occult sciences, astrology, and many such supernatural sciences become the object of interest for natives having Jupiter in the 8th house. However, there is a catch. if the horoscope is of poor quality, if the native is a cheap person, then these kinds of natives can also indulge in the dark world of black magic, and in certain cases can also become victims of black magic spells. So it all depends on the overall quality of the birth chart. 8th house retrograde Jupiter can go either way, can become a Buddha or can become a fake hypocrite person. If Jupiter is in Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Cancer, Scorpio or Pisces sign, then the results are more positive than otherwise. Retrograde Jupiter in 9th house. This is a very positive placement. Person takes great interest in attaining higher education as well as attaining higher consciousness. Philosophy, religious teachings attracts the attention of the native, and generally this placement is positive as far as relations with father or fatherly figures is concerned. Retrograde Jupiter may delay certain expected promotions or business growth, but one day success comes in a grand way. It is just that the native should be patient. If Jupiter is in Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Cancer, Scorpio or Pisces sign, then the results are more better. Long journeys, foreign connections and fame due to knowledge is what triggers when the retrograde Jupiter falls in the 9th house. Retrograde Jupiter in 10th house. This is not a good placement for retrograde Jupiter. Jupiter in the 10th house is not comfortable because Jupiter, the planet of wisdom, gets suffocated in the do more nature of the 10th house. Jupiter likes peace, Shanti, and here in the very center of the chart, in the 10th house, there is a hell of a rush and a lot of noise, which certainly is not what Jupiter likes. And when Jupiter is retrograde, then career suffers badly. Delays and more delays happen in the matters of career, and in some cases, life seems to be stuck with absolutely no idea of where you are heading to. Confusion in the matters of career, problems with the boss, and choosing the wrong profession are some of the traits of retrograde Jupiter in the 10th house. The only hope is when this retrograde Jupiter falls in Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Cancer, Scorpio or Pisces sign. Then the results are more better than otherwise. Nowadays, senior management of certain big companies ask for birth details before appointing a person as the CEO because they want to check if the person has Jupiter in the 10th house or if the person is running through Rahu Mahadesha or Shani Sadesati. Don't be surprised. One of my dear friend was rejected for the CEO position just because they found out that he was running through Shani Sadesati period. Some facts are unbelieving, but trust my words, they are real, very real. Retrograde Jupiter in 11th house. Wrong friends and wrong perception about life. 11th house retrograde Jupiter is a challenging placement. 11th house is the fulfillment of desires. However, it is necessary to remember that Sri Guru exists in the state of desirelessness. And so bringing Guru into the 11th house is like forcing him to fulfill your desires. Normal Jupiter may have fulfilled, but a retrograde Jupiter will definitely give you a run for your money, making you struggle for every small desire that you want to fulfill. Overall, Jupiter in the 11th house is not a position that will bring loads of money to you. In fact, it will make you struggle more for every penny you earn. Support from elder siblings is missing because the native may not have any elder brothers or sisters. This placement can lead to a large network of friends or connections, but not much is gained through friends or connections. Overall, it is a sad placement for retrograde Jupiter. It is better to expect less with this kind of placement. Retrograde Jupiter in the 12th house. This is the best placement for Jupiter. Retrograde Jupiter in the 12th house is excellent for meditations and self growth. Native at some stage of life gets inclined towards the spiritual path, and then there is no looking back. At the later stage of life, these natives start getting spiritual signals from the higher souls or angels. If the overall quality of the horoscope is good, then such men and women can do extremely well on the spiritual path. Preachers, teachers, and good counselors are born with this placement. If retrograde Jupiter falls in Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces sign, then the results are more positive. Always remember, whenever Jupiter is in Dharma and Moksha signs, then the outcome is always positive. Though the chart should belong to a quality person, not a cheap, offensive person who just goes on commenting like an idiot. Overall, retrograde Jupiter results vary based on the sign and house it occupies. In a negative horoscope, this retrograde Jupiter will lead to avivek, meaning doing self-destructive actions, committing sins, and basically living in utter ignorance. Such a man or woman continues to comment offensively and thereby hurt others, and by doing so, they continue to fall from the grace of the Holy Lord and end up living a miserable life. However, those quality souls, those beautiful souls having retrograde Jupiter will continue to progress since they make good use of the second chance that retrograde Jupiter gives them in this human birth. Always remember, human life is very, very precious because you don't get human life every birth. If you are an utterly negative person, harming others by your offending comments and actions, then mark my words, you will be born as an animal in the next birth cycle. Remember, the next birth is based on the level of awareness that you have at the very end of your life. If you live like an animal filled with lust and anger and jealousy, then after death you will actually take birth as an animal. Now, what kind of animal you will be is all based on what kind of actions and desires you have been indulging in. It is a deep subject, the subject of life after death. However, for now, all you need to know is that if you continue to hurt others by posting offending comments and living with cheap, low-level thoughts, then your ticket to hell is confirmed. Retrograde Jupiter natives suffer a lot because of black magic spells. This is because retrogression in a way slows down the energy of Lord Jupiter. And so, if Rahu is powerful in the birth chart, then the native struggles and suffers because of black magic spells. In fact, it is easy for black magicians and tantrics to target a person having retrograde Jupiter. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara. Meaning, the benevolent Guru is the space, that is Brahma, is Vishnu, that is the provider, and is Shiva, that is the moksha provider. Once, when I was staying at Sajjangad, a divine fort, since it has the samadhi of the great spiritual master Samartha Ramdas Swami, avatar of Lord Hanuman, I read a letter written by Samartha Ramdas Swami to his disciple who also was an enlightened fellow. Samartha Ramdas Swami writes in Marathi, तुम्ही आमुचे आणि आम्ही सर्व देवांचे. Meaning, you are my and I belong to all gods and goddesses. The depth of these words can only be understood by a meditative person. It implies that it is the master, the benevolent Guru who can lead you to God. That is why Sant Kabir also says that if Guru and God come before me, then first I will prostrate before Guru who introduced God to me. That is how significant the Guru is. However, it is important to note that Guru need not be in physical form. Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi therefore reminds us that Guru is the Self. Self is our consciousness. As you work on yourself, as you come closer to the state of higher consciousness, as you continue to expand your consciousness, one day the Master appears before you in physical form. In fact, the matter of fact is that if you really expand your consciousness, then you may never feel the need to meet your master in physical form. Always remember, Guru is not physical but spiritual, because it is the infinite and ever-living reality, which is always shining in our heart as pure self-awareness. You need a Guru in physical form because the mind makes you believe that with the physical presence of some Guru, you can overcome the difficulties of your life. But this is just an illusion. You tend to believe in this illusion that your mind leads you to because you are still ruled by your mind. One day, Mohan asked, "Who is the master?" I said, "Sit down, Mohan. I will now share a beautiful story with you. Maybe then you will find the answer to your question." Once it happened. There was a great Sufi saint. His name was Junaid. And Junaid was going through the marketplace of the town with his disciples. And it was his way to take any situation and use it. A man was dragging his cow by a rope. And Junaid said, "Wait," to the man, and told his disciples, "Surround this man and the cow. I am going to teach you something." The man stopped. Junaid was a famous mystic, and he was also interested in what he was going to teach these disciples and how he was going to use him and the cow. And Junaid asked his disciples, "I ask you one thing. Who is bound to whom? Is the cow bound to this man, or is this man bound to this cow?" Of course, the disciple said, "The cow is bound to the man. The man is the master. He is holding the rope. The cow has to follow him wherever he goes. He is the master and the cow is the slave. Junaid said, "Now see." He took out his scissors and cut the rope, and the cow escaped. The man ran after the cow, and Junaid said, "Now look what is happening. Now you see who is the master." The cow is not interested at all in this man. In fact, she is escaping. And the man was very angry. He said, "What kind of experiment is this?" Junaid said to his disciples, "And this is the case with your mind. All the nonsense that you are carrying inside is not interested in you. You are interested in it. You are keeping it together somehow. You are becoming mad in keeping it together somehow. But you are interested in it. The moment you lose interest, the moment you understand the futility of it, it will start disappearing. Like the cow, it will escape. People come to me and ask, how to stop this mad mind? I say, there is no need to stop. All that is needed is that you become disinterested in it and the rope is cut. That is the meaning of sannyas, becoming disinterested in the mind. That is the meaning of real vairagya, detachment. It has nothing to do with renouncing the world, but it certainly has something to do with cutting the rope to the mind. Just become disinterested in the rubbish, and slowly you will see a gap arising. The cloud that used to surround you always is getting farther and farther away. And one day, suddenly, it is no more there. Mind is the sole reason for all your miseries. Retrograde Jupiter is a sign that you will start focusing within. You will start turning inwards. You will no longer entertain the monkey mind and the thoughts that it leads you to. You will slowly start rising above the mind, and then the mind is no more your master. You become the master of your mind, and when you become the master and your mind becomes your servant, then you are truly progressing in your journey called life. Life need not have any meaning. If you feel life is meaningless, that simply means you do not know how to live. You do not know that meaning has nothing to do with life. Remember, life is in living. It is not a thing. It is a process. There is no way to attain life except by living it, except by being alive. Life is not somewhere happening for you. It is happening in you. There is no purpose in life. Life is its purpose. One who enjoys the journey of life is not bothered about the destination, is not bothered about the purpose. He is simply happy to live moment to moment. A man of awareness lives moment to moment. He is perfectly aware that past is no more and future is not yet. Now is the only moment. A man of awareness lives by being here and now. The mind cannot exist in the present. If you can be here, totally present, your mind will disappear. Learn to be here now. Meditation is the way that can help you to bring the mind to the present, to the now moment. It is only when you are able to be here now that you are progressing in life, that you are becoming a flower, a beautiful flower, ready to blossom, ready to bloom, ready to dance in the breeze. Live, love, let go, and learn to be here now. That is the surest way to attain lasting happiness. Jai Sri Ganesha, Jai Guru. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha.